Today on Steelers Talk, I'm going to be previewing the 8 biggest decisions that the Pittsburgh Steelers need to make for the 2025 NFL offseason, and I'm going to be explaining how these decisions will shape what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to do and going to be as a football team heading into the 2025 regular season. Welcome into the show, guys. If you are pumped for this offseason, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon. Help this video out, and make sure you guys click that subscribe button as well, because we've got extensive offseason coverage on the Pittsburgh Steelers every single day. So the first decision that needs to be made is what, if any, coaching changes are there going to be to this unit? Now, the reports out there is that Mike Tomlin, Arthur Smith, Terrell Austin are likely safe, but the positional coaches, those are the ones where we might see some changes. And I do think Tomlin, Art, and Austin are going to be all back, all right? And even if they do fire Terrell Austin, all right? And, that is the move that they end up making. It's not going to make a whole lot of a difference, guys, and here's why. This is Mike Tomlin's defense, all right? Whoever's the defensive coordinator runs the defense that he wants to run and has run here in Pittsburgh since he took over all those years back. It's now been 18 seasons here in Pittsburgh, and they've run more or less the same defense in just about every single season, all right? So if you get rid of Terrell Austin, Tomlin's just going to hire another one of his minions to do his bidding. All right, so that's the way that it's going to go. So I really don't think firing Austin's going to change much defensively here in Pittsburgh. And I think that the one positional coach that without question needs to go is offensive line coach Pat Meyer. I mean, how many offensive linemen and high draft picks is this guy and this team going to ruin before they realize that this guy might be the worst positional coach in the National Football League? I mean, Kevin Dotson was a bad player. And then he goes to the Los Angeles Rams and is immediately grading as a top 5 guard in all of football. I mean, first of all, it's Mike Tomlin putting him on the wrong side of the line. That's a classic Tomlin mistake. But then Pat Meyer doesn't develop these guys. Look at Broderick Jones. He hasn't developed at all since he's gotten here. Mason McCormick, awful transition from left guard to right guard this year. All right? I'm sick and tired of all of these high draft picks failing in Pittsburgh. And thank God Zach Frazier was pretty much bust-proof because he's just so freaking good out of the box. But the Steelers do not develop offensive line talent, and they need to go back to the guy that actually did a good job of that in the early years of the Mike Tomlin regime, and that is Mike Munchak. All right, go back to this guy. He was awesome as the offensive line coach in Pittsburgh, and he is currently available to hire. So if he wants the job, it's his as far as I am concerned. But, of course, I'm sure they're probably going to keep Pat Meyer because I guess he's got something against Mike Tomlin, something against his family that if Mike just can't let him go. Then we get to the second key decision that the Steelers need to make, which is what are they going to do at quarterback? And, there's a lot of options at their disposal. We never know which guys are going to be demanding trades out of places, so there might be more options. But these are kind of the main options, in my opinion, that could pop up for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. It'll be interesting to see if they feel like either one of those guys is their guy for 2025. But outside of the organization, guys like Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins, and Aaron Rodgers, you might be looking at this list and saying, Jack, all these guys stink, maybe besides Sam Darnold. But, you look at this list, the options aren't phenomenal. And that's just going to be the reality of the Steelers quarterback search. When you don't have the money to go out and get big quarterbacks. And by the way, if a quarterback is playing very well, not many of them are made available. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are absolutely in quarterback purgatory right now, and they're going to have to make the best, worst decision for this football team this offseason, whatever that is, whether that's Russ, whether that's Fields, whether that's Derek Carr, whether that's somebody else. We're going to be here covering it for you guys right here on Steelers Talk. So let me know down there in the comments section. Who should be Pittsburgh's QB1 next year? Who's your favorite to get the job? Do you want Darnold? Do you want to make a move for Stafford? Do you want Fields? Do you want Russ back? Let me know down there in the comment section for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by let me know who you want to be QB1 for 2025. Another key decision for the Steelers to make this year is what the heck is going to happen with George Pickens. And this is going to be a huge storyline, guys. And it's probably going to be developing maybe even later in the offseason because I think George Pickens is probably going to want an extension because he is going into the final year of his rookie contract, all right? And that is where GP is at this point. I think he's going to demand an extension because I think he's frustrated with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. I think he's frustrated both with his production from an individual standpoint, and I think he's very much frustrated with the offensive collective production as well. And I think that GP is certainly somebody that feels like the production that he has gotten in the first years of his career is not indicative of the talent that he brings to the table. He probably views himself as a top 10, the top 5 wide receiver in all of football. And the production that he has given has just not really been there for George Pickens, if we're being completely honest with you, especially in the touchdown category. And I just don't know if Pittsburgh's going to want to pay up. I don't know if they're going to want to pay whatever the price tag is. I think George will probably want at least like 26, and it could get up to like $30 million per year, depending on how he feels about himself. And I'm just not sure with this production right here, guys, that the Steelers are going to want to pay up. I mean, just 3 touchdown receptions this year, 5 the previous season, and 4 in his rookie season. Now, it's absolutely a good point. You had Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields throwing you the ball in these seasons, all right? But, you know, if you're going to want to make $28 to $30 million a year, I don't know if these are numbers that are indicative of that kind of contract, and I think George is going to demand that kind of money out of the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason. And my prediction here is that they're going to come to a stalemate, and eventually George is going to say, and he's going to request a trade. And I think that the Steelers will probably agree, and they will oblige to trade him elsewhere at some point this offseason, and the Steelers are going to completely reboot the wide receiver position. And the worst part about this, guys, and what really kills me about this is that a player of GP's caliber, in terms of talent, should be worth a first-round pick. But because of the behavior issues, because of the crash outs, because of not showing up to practices and meetings on time, according to reports, all these different things, and also the lack of relative number 1 receiver production the last 3 years, I think that the team that acquires him is probably going to get him for like maybe a 3rd-round pick, maybe a 4th-round pick. Hell, at the worst-case scenario, maybe even a 5th-round pick, depending on what the market is. But, you know, I'm really hoping that the Steelers and George Pickens can come together and find a solution. Whether that's keeping George Pickens for his last year of his rookie contract, and George agrees to that, whether that's finding a good extension number that's like $22, $23 million per year to keep him in Pittsburgh long term. I hope they come to some sort of solution, but something tells me this is going to be a pretty hairy situation that might end ugly for this football team. Then another thing when it comes to the wide receivers, how aggressive are the Steelers going to be at the wide receiver position? We know they went after Brandon Ayuk. We know they went after Devontae Adams. We know that they went after Cooper Kupp and a bunch of other receivers and didn't get any of them in 2024. They went over, all right? And this was the wide receiver room last year. You guys can see their statuses heading into the offseason. A lot of people are not going to be here next year. And then if you trade George Pickens away, all you have is Calvin Austin III and Roman Wilson on this list, and if you get rid of Cordero Patterson. So this might look like a completely different wide receiver room next year, guys. And personally, I would add at least two more wide receivers that are starting quality players this offseason. Probably one in free agency or via trade, and then the other one via the draft. All right, that one guy for the future, one guy for now. And I think that that's probably the best way to go about it if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, coming up here on Steelers Talk, 4 more key decisions for Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin to make this offseason that will shape this team heading into next year. But before we get into that, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Game Time, which is the best place to buy tickets for the sports, music, comedy, and theater in your area. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Simply select the Game Time Picks button at the top of the screen when you get into the Game Time app, and they automatically filter through every single ticket in their database to find you the best deals on any ticket that you can find to a live event. What I love about using the Game Time app and why it's the only ticketing app I have on my phone is you get the lowest price guarantee on any ticket to any event, all in pricing so you don't get slapped with a crazy fee at checkout, and flash deals so you can get even cheaper tickets the closer you wait to game time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS. It's one word, all caps, CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. It's just for that first purchase, guys. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So another question that the Steelers will need to answer here is, can they get a game-changing running back to be kind of the focal point of this offense moving forward? Because the way Arthur Smith wants to run his offense is that the run game is the main engine, and in order to do that, in order to run the ball at will, you have to have a game-changing superstar-level running back. And if we're being honest with ourselves about Najee Harris, guys, I think he's a fine, starting, capable running back. He runs really, really hard. He's not a dynamic threat, man. He's not picking up 30 to 40-yard chunks, all right? He's somebody that fights for extra yardage and can get you the 1 or 2 extra yards you need to move the sticks, but that's not the way the Steelers want to play. They want to play dynamically. They want to play dominantly against an opposing defense where they can't stop the run. And unfortunately for Najee, throughout these years, he's been pretty easy to stop relatively. He doesn't play with great vision, and, he does use his size to his advantage, but this year he had a lower yards per carry than last year. All right, so he's regressing in that regard. He had fewer touchdowns, a relatively the same amount of yards, but with the 263 carries that he had, he was pretty much a workhorse for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. I mean, the fact that he just got over 1,000 yards is kind of sad, to be honest, guys. Like, that's not good production, and it's not the type of dynamic, game-changing presence that the Steelers need in order for this offense to be what it wants to be in the run game. So here are the top running back prospects in the National Football League draft this year, all of which I think have a chance to be a game-wrecking type of talent in this league. Guys like Ashton Gianti, that would be a first-round pick for the Steelers. Omarion Hampton out of UNC is a really well-rounded running back as well. Cam Scadaboo, that guy's a bust, all right? You want to bring back like Jerome Bettis-style football here in Pittsburgh? That is the bust right there. Then you got Dylan Sampson, who was unbelievable for the Volunteers in Tennessee this year, and somebody that I'm falling in love with in my film study for the draft this year, guys. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. Reminds me a lot of James Conner, who, by the way, is one of the best running backs in football. Of course, Conner played here in Pittsburgh for a while. Then Caleb Johnson can be a souped-up version of James Conner. I think he's that good. Then we get to another key decision that'll need to be made is, will there be any major changes on the offensive line? And, this is an offensive line that wasn't very good this year, plain and simply. They were one of the worst offensive lines in all of football, actually. And, you take a look at what they had to deal with here. Dan Moore Jr., man, he was doo-doo garbage baby in the second half of the season. He was awful after a really good first half of the season. Then Isaac Seumalo was fine. Zach Frazier had a really good rookie season, no problems with those guys. But then Mason McCormick and Broderick Jones really didn't have good seasons. McCormick was moving over from the left side where he played in college over to the right side, and it didn't really work out for him, if I'm being honest. And then Broderick Jones, of course, they moved him over to the right side his rookie season, and he's never looked comfortable on the right side. All right, so what worries me is that this is what it looks like next year, or what it's projected to look like. There's only 2 changes, and one of them just moved from right tackle to left tackle, and we have no idea if Broderick Jones is going to be a good player at left tackle. We have no idea if Troy Fautano is going to stay healthy. We have no idea if Mason McCormick is going to take that big step in year 2 at right guard. All right, those are 3 major question marks for this offensive line, and you pretty much have to go a perfect 3 for 3 if this offense is going to be the type of offense that they want to be next season. And there's no way around it, guys. You need to get this big leap from the offensive line. All right, you look at any Arthur Smith offense that's had success, it's always helmed by a dominant group up front. All right, and the Steelers need to get to playing that kind of football next year, or it's going to be another season of bottom 10 production offensively for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And frankly, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is going to be next season. Then we get to another thing here, and this is going to be a big question. Do they trade any of their expensive defensive pieces? And I think the answer is no, because you look at the big defensive contracts, right? You're paying 5 players over $100 million against the cap next year. You're paying T.J. Watt over $30 million again, all right, and he's getting older. Minkah Fitzpatrick didn't have a great season production-wise. You've got a $22.3 million cap hit slated. I'm guessing these 2 probably get restructured, by the way. Cam Hayward will have almost a $20 million cap hit. Highsmith is sitting at 18.6, and Patrick Queen, who he signed last offseason, goes up to 17.6. So that's a grand total, guys, of $108.5 million on 5 players on defense. All right, this is the problem with Mike that I have with Mike Tomlin. Too much spending. I love all these players, by the way, but it's too much spending on defensive players, and there's not enough. And right now, you're just sending the scraps to the offensive side of the ball, and we see the results here in Pittsburgh. My prediction, guys, everybody stays put. I think the one guy that I would consider trading is Minkah, but he's essentially a player coach at this point. He is like Mike Tomlin's best friend. So there's just no way he's going to trade his best friend. All right, he's just not going to do it. They're going to restructure him. They're going to keep him in Pittsburgh, and I think that they're going to continue this trend of defensive spending here in Pittsburgh. Final key decision that they're going to have to make is at the cornerback 2 spot. Do they bring back Dante Jackson? Do they go with Corey Trice Jr. on the outside and go with that avatar duo with the long physical corners of Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice? The early reports here, guys, is that the Steelers want to bring back Dante Jackson, and Dante Jackson wants to come back to Pittsburgh. So I think that is a really, really bad idea, guys. I think Dante Jackson was a really big issue for the Steelers defense this season in coverage. You take a look at his PFF grades last season, and they were abysmal. Now, PFF grades aren't gospel, but I can tell you, based on the film that I've watched from this past season, guys, this is absolutely backed up by the tape. He's terrible in man coverage. That's evidenced by a 49.4 overall grade that ranked 111th out of 116 eligible corners. And then the coverage grade was even worse at 45.1. This is the guy that the Steelers are desperate to get back as their number 2 corner. I'm sorry, man. Let's go get a better option. Let's go get an upgrade. Why are we settling for a guy that's the 111th best overall corner in the National Football League according to the grading? Makes absolutely no sense, and the Steelers need an upgrade at this position. Can't be Dante Jackson, in my opinion, and I understand he lucked into a couple of interceptions this year, 5 interceptions. He was in the right place at the right time. The dude can't cover in man coverage. That's a huge liability in a conference here in the AFC and in a division in the AFC North with guys like Jamar Chase, with guys like Zay Flowers. All right, you got to have guys that can cover and hold up in one-on-one coverage. Dante Jackson can't do that, so you need to upgrade. So discuss it below. Should Dante Jackson be back next year as this team's CB2? Personally, I want this team to go out and make a big move at corner to put alongside Joey Porter Jr. and solidify this secondary. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section with a yes or a no. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of today's show. We got more offseason coverage coming your way here on Steelers Talk in future days, so make sure you guys click that subscribe button to join our family.